Welcome to another episode of Systematic Geekology. This is a space where we seek to create and cultivate healthy conversations between those things we geek out on and the philosophical and theological questions that often arise out of our fandoms. Like, what does it mean to be human? What makes a hero? What makes a villain? How do the stories and narratives we geek out on shape how we live in the world? We are your priest to the geeks. We aren't all ordained, but we see ourselves as mediators at the intersection of geek culture and going deeper in our faith. We don't always have to agree, but we do respect each other, and we see everyone as a beloved child of God. Everyone geeks out on something, so come geek out with us and enjoy the show.
You're listening to an Anazal Ministries podcast.
Hello, Kryptonians, geekologists everywhere. This is Systematic Geekology. We are the priest of the geeks. I am Kevin Schaeffer, here with one of my favorite geekologists, Christian Ashley. Christian, Bizarro Christian, how are you today?
Me am sad.
I love it. I like it. If you talk like that the entire episode, I think that would be really impressive. If you try to talk like Bizarro, and I'll try to talk like Clark Kent Superman, I think it would be really entertaining, but also it might drive you crazy.
A little bit. Yeah, I think I'm done after that.
But great intro, though. So, yeah. So, yes, we are, if for anyone who lives under a rock, there is a new Superman movie coming out this week. You may have heard me and Christian talk about it a little bit in the last few months to a year, and we could not be more excited. And so with that in mind, we are talking today about the classic Superman the Animated Series from the 90s. We're going to be doing a deep dive into that and talking about it in the context of when it was created to what it's like now, its relevance, and especially its influence on the upcoming Superman movie, as James Gunn has talked a lot about how the animated universe from the 90s and 2000s had a heavy impact on him. So I'm very excited to get into this series. But Christian, before we do that, let us do the what are we geeking out on? So what else are you geeking out on right now?
Yeah, I just read not too long ago the first issue of the new Captain America run by Chip Zdarsky. It's a pretty promising start. There are some concerns, but I'm ready to see what he cooks with it.
Very cool. Nice. I like that.
Hey, Evan.
Oh, and Evan's here. Hey, Evan. How's it going? But yeah, awesome. Yeah, on my end, not too much different from, I know we just recorded on Sunday, the Peter David episode, so not too much. I hesitate to say, pretty much all Superman stuff, but yeah, I'm going through Superman and Lois again. Obviously, this series we're talking about today, I still love the DC Studios Showcase podcast. That I cannot recommend enough. And they actually just put out an interview with David Corenswet and Nicholas Hoult, so highly recommend that. Outside of that, I did check out the Ironheart pilot. I enjoyed it, and I've heard some really big. I haven't watched the rest of the series yet. I know it's pretty short, but I heard some really big things about the finale. I haven't looked into yet, so I'll probably be watching that either later this week or weekend because I think it's only 5 or 6 episodes. Which is my only. I know we've griped about this before, and I agree that shows are way too short these days. But I thought the intro was solid, so I am looking forward to getting back into that. So
yeah, I need to watch that too. I just don't care about her character in the comics, and it's going to be hard to convince me to watch the show. I mean, I'm going to watch the show.
Sure,
it's just are they going to convert me or not? I don't know.
That's fair. I mean, because wasn't it Bendis who wrote the original run?
I think so, yes.
Okay, so yeah, Bendis's writing is very hit or miss for me. I'm not a Bendis hater and not a Bendis oh my gosh, I love everything he does. So I have not read the original yet, but I do think the actor is really strong. I think it's kind of fun. Not quite coming of age, but a little bit of that. And then just, this element of a Iron Man successor. It's got some fun stuff in there, and I like the cast. So it's, so far the pilot was enjoyable. But yeah, awesome. All right. Well, before we get into our main topic, for our viewers, listeners out there, please rate, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on YouTube, please hit that like button and subscribe. Again, we say it every time, but if we get 50 likes on any episode, Will Rose will film himself doing something to the effect of either frolicking through a field of flowers, or he might, give us an inside look at his geek cave, his fortress of solitude. So if you wanted to see that, please hit that like button. And if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, leave us a review. It really helps. And you can also support us on Patreon for just a few bucks a month. It really helps, but we are grateful for all of you. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Someone who's
Yes.
been in Will's house, it's a pretty impressive collection.
Right. I mean, it would be actually a fun, maybe we can even add to this. I would be fully willing to, I mean, I know I'm in my geek cave right now anyway, but it's only a portion of it. I would be more than happy to, I know while I cannot run through my geek cave, I can certainly, I could show my robot arm, running, swinging around and, taking a tour through my geek cave. I would be more than happy to do that too. So if you want to see any glimpses of our various geek caves from all the hosts on the show, hit that like button. So there we go. Awesome. Well, so I'm very excited to get into this topic today. Anyone who has listened to the show for a while knows that Christian and I especially are big fans of, superhero cartoons in general, but especially the late 90s, early 2000s with DC and Marvel. And this, for me, was just peak DC. Batman the Animated Series, Superman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited, Static Shock. It was just one hit after another. So we're going to look specifically at Superman the Animated Series today, which debuted in 1996. It ran 54 episodes. It starred Tim Daly as the voice of Superman, Dana Delany as Lois Lane, Clancy Brown as Lex Luthor, and was co-created by Bruce Timm, who, of course, was a pioneer of Batman the Animated Series and the entirety of the DC animated universe. And Christian, what do you want to say about just kind of an overview of the series before we get into our specific thoughts? An overview, and I've also got some tidbits about how it originated as well.
Yeah. I remember being super excited as a kid when I saw this coming up. My dad, over the years, and Cartoon Network at that time, I think, was starting to show more Super Friends and some of the older 60s Superman cartoons and stuff like that. And Dad has always been the guy that's like taping other stuff from back in the day. And he showed me some of the cartoon from the 80s that had Superman in it. And now there was going to be a brand new one. It was going to be my Superman. And as someone who really grew up loving Batman the Animated Series, it's like, oh man, yes, more, please. There's more superheroes. I love my crossovers. I love to see them hanging out with each other in the same world. And Superman showed up. I'm like, man, he seems kind of weak, but he's still Superman. It's like that was an intentional thing they did, is they nerfed him a little bit because Superman is really overpowered. And so this is a Superman not in his prime yet. He's learning, not in the same way he is in My Adventures with Superman. He's got a little more prep, more street cred, I guess, growing up. But like, he's learning things. He's figuring things out, how to be a better superhero, how strong he actually is, how to use his superpowers well. It was great. I love this show. It's a ton of fun. Like, to this day, you mentioned Clancy Brown, Lex Luthor. That's the only Lex Luthor I know. When I hear that voice, Smallville, Michael Rosenbaum does a great job. But when I think of Lex Luthor, when I'm reading a comic, it's Clancy Brown's voice that I hear. That's when I say it's Christopher David Barnes' voice I hear when I read Spider-Man. Like, they do a tremendous job here. And I know in Justice League, they changed the voice actor for Superman to, I think it's George Norton or something like that.
George Newbern. And I learned that recently. Yeah, it was just because of scheduling conflicts with Tim Daly. It wasn't any bitterness or anything like that. Okay, it was just he had some other projects. So it was a very amicable thing. Because I wondered that too. Like, because for the longest time, I thought they were the same because they sound so alike. I didn't even know growing up that it was different actors. But yeah, when I listened to the audiobook of Superman Beyond Unauthorized Biography, which is actually narrated by George Newbern, there's a section about that.
Okay. Yeah, like, this is a really fun show. One of the things I really appreciate about this is I think it turned a lot of people away from the bad idea that I think we all get into at some point. Is like, Superman's boring. He's just a big blue Boy Scout. Like, there's not interesting. It's like, no, like, I think a good litmus test for people is that you go through that phase and then you grow out of it and go, no, Superman's the guy we need. Yeah, he's overpowered compared to a lot of heroes, but like he's who we should be looking up to in the same way that, Captain America is pretty much like the heart and soul of the Marvel universe. Superman is the heart and soul of the DC universe. Like both men, you look up to them for similar reasons. And if you don't like Superman, like, I'm not saying you're a bad person, but I'm saying you have some bad takes.
No, absolutely. I mean, I run into so many people over the years who are like, he's just like too good, too all powerful. And I think you're missing the point of Superman when you have that assumption, because there are so many stories that emphasize the human side of him and that he is not infallible by any means. And if you dig into some of the best Superman stories, you'll see these really rich characterization. You realize that he has strengths and weaknesses, and this show is, I think, one of the best depictions of that. Also, since you brought up Lex Luthor, fun fact there is that Clancy Brown originally auditioned for Superman for this series and reluctantly took the role of Lex Luthor, which, funnily enough, the same thing, well, I wouldn't say reluctantly in this case, but the same thing happened with Nicholas Hoult in the new Superman movie. He auditioned for Superman actually on the same day as David Corenswet. They were on an interview recently on Jimmy Kimmel. It was Diego Luna guest hosting, which check out that interview. It's just like the ultimate crossover there of Diego Luna interviewing David Corenswet and Nicholas Hoult. But Nicholas Hoult auditioned for Superman that day, and then when he met David Corenswet, he was like, "Yeah, that guy's born to play Kal-El." And then he was still elated to accept the role of Lex Luthor. But I find it funny that there was a parallel here. So yeah, but it is just a brilliant voice cast all around, brilliant animation, and a little bit about the origin of the series. So obviously, Batman in the animated series had a profound impact on pop culture in the 90s and still does today. It's, still regarded as the best Batman adaptation of all time. And so at this point, by 96, Warner Brothers was pushing for a Superman series because of the upcoming Superman movie that never happened. If you want there are infinite podcasts and articles and stories on that. There's actually a whole documentary, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened. This was the famous Tim Burton Superman movie with Nicolas Cage that never happened, sadly, because if I could live in an alternate universe where I could see that movie, I wish I could. But they were, this series was developed in order to help coincide with and promote that movie. So it is ironic that movie never happened, but thankfully we got this series nonetheless. And at that point, Bruce Timm had gone on to actually have meetings with Steven Spielberg about developing an animated series because Spielberg was impressed with his work on Batman the Animated Series. That eventually turned into, I think it's called Freakazoid. It was which Bruce Timm had loose involvement with. He ended up just getting kind of he had a different pitch originally for what he wanted it to be, and then visions collided and they changed. So he didn't stay on the show for long. And then once he was freed up, Warner Brothers came back to him and asked him to develop Superman. So thank God he was available, because I can't imagine anyone else helming not only this series, but the rest of the DC animated universe. Even though it was not planned on being this interconnected universe from the beginning, it just started off as Batman. I am so glad that it did evolve into this wonderful, rich, interconnected universe. And Superman is a great addition to that. And so, so Bruce Timm, Paul Dini, a lot of these same creators from Batman the Animated Series came on to work on Superman. And originally, they were drawing a lot of inspiration from the Max Fleischer cartoons of the 1940s, which I think you can still probably see those somewhere, probably on YouTube or there may be physical copies. Yeah, or there may be physical copies. That was an iconic Superman adaptation back at that time and had a profound impact on the comics and on the radio serials, the movie serials, all of that. And originally they were trying to model it after that, but then they decided, no, we kind of need to do something different and we need to make it, something. They drew a lot of inspiration from the John Byrne Man of Steel series, which was at that time, the freshest retelling of Superman's origin. So that became a huge impact. And then also, like, with the aesthetic of Batman the Animated Series, I think they did want it to kind of fit into that world. And so they have the Art Deco style here. And, I mean, just look at that image right there. I think, they could not have come up with a better version that fit both the modern era, but also called, derived inspiration from the classic Superman art, illustrations, cartoons. And so, you get this version. I think it fits seamlessly in with the rest of the DC animated universe. And so, but I always find it funny that, like, it was developed as almost a promotion for the Superman movie that never happened. And it would then still take actually Superman the Animated Series premiered in 1986. The next Superman movie didn't happen until 2000. Was it 2006 or 7 with Superman Returns? I want to say it was 06 because I was in 6th grade at the time. I remember because I saw it
Superman Returns.
So a full decade later, we would finally get another Superman movie. It was a long road to that, and there were a number of projects that almost happened and were then abandoned. So it's a fascinating transition there. But we did get 54 episodes of this series, and I think it still really holds up. So that is a little bit of a history in going into what the series is, and looking at some of the big ideas portrayed in the series and how it depicts Superman in the DC universe.
Hey friends, your pal Will Rose here. Sometimes I ask myself, have you ever wondered how you can support Systematic Geekology? Yes, I have. And well, if you're like me, you want Systematic Geekology to continue to grow and thrive. And you can do that by joining Patreon for as little as $3 a month. As a patron, you get bonus episodes. We answer bonus questions that our patrons get to hear. We have special shout outs. We have certain episodes that the patrons pick. So you help us create and curate the content that we put out for the world to hear. You even get free merch. And when I say that we're a worldwide podcast, that I'm not being hyperbolic. Somebody told me that we have over 20,000 subscribers from all over the world, and just half of those subscribers join Patreon for $3 a month. We would be set on keeping moving forward with the tech that we need to have the quality of podcast that we want our hearers to experience. And it'll help us get to certain events and conventions so that we can see you face to face and geek out with you in person. And let me just share that there's no shame, no guilt. If you can't join Patreon at this point, that's okay. That's okay. Just keep listening, keep sharing, keep liking, because yes, we're proud of what we're doing at Systematic Geekology. And friends, guess what? You can subscribe to Patreon for free to receive one extra bonus episode a month via the Patreon or Spotify app. That is fantastic. And we're glad that you're a part of it.
Christian, what were some of the biggest themes of the series that really stood out to you?
A huge part of this is Clark, like, learning who he is. What does it mean to be this Kryptonian, not born on Earth, but pretty much adopted by Earth, through extra normal means, coming here. And it's like, because he's not like everyone else. And yet he does look pretty similar to everyone else. So it's enough for him to fit in that way. But he's also got this huge responsibility that comes from having two really great adopted parents who instill these intensely amazing moral values into him, to be the better man, to guide someone who could have easily ended up way worse, to the point where we have 50 billion evil Superman knockoffs to this day across multiple media, which is a huge problem, but that's a separate issue. But to then this humble guy who just wants to help people and look after them, while also like have a career, find the girl of his dreams in Lois Lane, who Lois Lane in this series is tremendous. They do a great job with her. But like learning what does it mean to be this human, but actually I'm really a Kryptonian, but I want to be with these people who've adopted me as their own and watch out for them and pay back what's been given to me. And at the same time, what does it mean to be like this hero and have people looking up to you? What does it mean when you fail them? What does it mean at the very end of the series? People really lose their faith in Superman because of what Darkseid does to him and having him attack the Earth and pretty much take it over in his name. that's dealt with as they eventually do get to the Justice League cartoon. He's still dealing with the after effects of that, but and how much it wounds him, because that's not who he wants to be. He wants to be someone people look up to. Amongst other things, we have greed and power that come in through our Lex Luthor figures, and then other villains as well, who are in it for the money or just doing it to have people respect them, and how that contrasts with Superman's more humble nature. Of Lex Luthor could never imagine that Clark Kent could actually be Superman, because why would a god debase himself to the form of a human, especially a reporter who doesn't get paid as much as anyone else? Like, it's a great contrast between the two of them. I'm going to stop before I take away more of your opportunities to talk about stuff.
No, absolutely. Those are, I mean, I like totally agree with all of that. And then, another thing, because like one of the villains that I forgot was in this series until doing a rewatch was Livewire. And that opened doors for, looking at the jealousy that a lot of the characters had towards Superman, even though, like you said, he is a humble one. He's not in it for the fame and the glory. He's just like here to help people. But still, some of the villains originated from this desire or this like greed and jealousy because they saw him getting all the glory and getting all the praise, and they wanted to establish names for themselves as well and get and they're like, what's so great about the big blue guy over there? He's just like, it's almost like the cynicism some of the villains have here is mirrored in a lot of the cynicism that people have towards Superman today. Not calling those people villains, but I'm just saying that but that's what they definitely draw that idea of what makes Superman relevant, and and using that as kind of a catalyst to build on some of the villain themes here, which I found really interesting, because it's that one of the things that made Batman the Animated Series so iconic was he, of course, has one of the best rogues galleries in all of comics. And, it was so easy to draw. And they also created characters for the series. So they just had an infinite number of characters to work with. Superman, admittedly, has, some great villains, obviously, like Luthor, Brainiac, Metallo, Mxyzptlk, but for the most part, he has and I'll get to that episode because that is there's a great Mxyzptlk episode written by Paul Dini. But for the most part, his rogues gallery is a little smaller, and so it's harder to, in some ways, to come up with fresh ideas and characters that make for interesting counterparts to Superman. But I do think they do a really good job here, and they have villains with different motivations and different backstories that make for some great storylines. So yeah, there's all of that. And like you said too, this is one of my favorite depictions of Lois Lane. The voice actor is fantastic, and I love how they give her just the personality that makes Lois such an iconic character in all of fiction. She's not even though you see that image of Superman rescuing her, he does that a lot, but nonetheless, she's not a damsel in distress. She's very fierce and independent. She is, the journalist that Clark is enamored with and Superman is enamored with. And, a lot of storylines revolve around her, not as a plot device, but as central to the story. And I just love, the depiction here that, it very much draws on a lot of inspiration, I think, from Margot Kidder's performance in the Christopher Reeve films. But it also really, Dana Delany really infuses her with her own identity here as well. And I just love the, seamless interaction between these characters. Jimmy Olsen as well. It's a great portrayal of the whole Daily Planet staff. You just can't get it better. And seeing all the trailers for the James Gunn movie, I just see so much of, this cast like brought to life in that. And I cannot be more excited for Thursday. So yeah, all of those themes really play a central part. There are, darker storylines, more lighthearted stuff. And like Batman the Animated Series, overall, it's more episodic, but there are still kind of overarching narratives that have a lot of payoff. And like you said, in particular, the kind of cliffhanger ending of the series, originally that was not the intention. They were going to do another full season, but they got cut short. But because the DC animated universe went on, like you said, they were able to resolve that storyline in Justice League years later in a really effective way, and still build on the character of Superman, the repercussions of the Dark Side storyline. So I really like how they do all of that.
And the Livewire episode made me remember too that it's not really a huge focus of the series, but I do a little bit of focusing on how media affects people, because she's a kind of a shock jock DJ, very opinionated. That's become far more popular in a different way through more podcasting and 24-hour news stations of all different stripes of the political spectrum, and how like you have a voice and how you choose to use that voice. She uses it to break down like the greatest guy who ever lived because of stuff like jealousy, of stuff like, well, what about if I had that power? What would I do with it? And not everyone's going to be Clark Kent. And that's one thing you learn along the way in the series, is that some people, in many respects, I mean, it doesn't focus on responsibility in the same way that Spider-Man does, but there's a bit of like, with great power, there must become great responsibility, because not everyone's going to turn out like Superman just because you've been gifted with these great abilities. You have your Metallos, you have, oh goodness gracious, who else? And it's Parasite. Using their things for their own gain. And you have Luthor who's like, I'd never deign to debase myself by giving myself powers in that way, but I'm going to use my money and resources to have this super cool armor, or use this new technology to try to take down Superman, or investigate this kryptonite thing. And how, going back to the media thing, how he is publicly perceived as this really great figure, and Clark knows who he really is, Lois knows who he really is, but even they are kind of not helpless, but they need proof. They can't just print Lex Luthor is a bad man. That's objectively true, but you need to like have proof to say that, because he could sue the heck out of them if they did that. They need to show and expose him for who he really is, and it's a slow process, but eventually along the way, I mean, including in Justice League, he is broken a little bit more.
And, one of the reasons I love that this version of Lex, and also Smallville's portrayed by Michael Rosenbaum are, two of my favorite depictions of Lex Luthor, is, you think about the Christopher Reeve movie, and I love Gene Hackman's performance there, and I love the depiction there, but he's sort of just like, just an obvious villain there. It's not that hard to prove why he's a bad guy. He's just like, he's, not only ruthless in the first appearance we see him in the movie, but I mean, he's outright just saying, oh, I'm evil. I want to, I'm be a real estate mogul who, wants to take over into Mustang. This version of Lex is obviously a cold and calculating Shakespearean villain, but he sees himself as the hero. He is the tech. Michael Rosenbaum's portrayal, they're the tech bro supervillains here, which I mean, I know that's hard to relate to in this day and age. A tech bro as the bad guy. Oh, how is that imaginable? But he sees himself as the savior of humanity, and using his intellect to develop new technologies and better humanity, and try to create this utopian society. Obviously, he's very misguided, and we know that, and he uses corruption and dastardly techniques, and he's so sinister. But again, in his mind, he is the hero, and Superman is an interruption and an obstacle to everything he's trying to do. Clancy Brown's performance, and it is so funny trying to imagine what he would sound like as Superman. I mean, he's one of my favorite actors, so I think he could do amazing things. But for me, he was just born to play Lex. In this series, he has the perfect voice for it, the mannerisms, and he just imbues the character with that sinister persona without it ever being cartoonish. I know that's ironic to say being a cartoon, but he does. He brings just this realistic Shakespearean depiction to the character that I love, and makes you so immersed, and you want to know. And like you said, because he's not immediately like, oh, he's the villain, like it's so easy to prove. Lois and Clark have to really work as journalists and to really pull back the curtain and expose him for who he is, because for a lot of the time in the public's eye, he is a hero, and he has done amazing things and believes that he has humanity's best interests at heart. So I love how it explores those themes and makes him such a compelling villain throughout.
Yes. Yeah, they do a tremendous job with Lex.
Yeah. Well, the other thing, too, is going back to Gene Hackman's Lex is surrounded by idiots in the movie. Whereas in the animated series, they created Mercy Graves for the show, and she is just as cold and sinister as him. And so I love it that, he's surrounding himself with people who he knows are going to help advance his goals, and, and also, so one of my favorite, was the Superman Batman movie, I watched that on VHS, repeatedly as a kid. Did it? I can't remember if it originated as episodes from Superman or
It's
from.
episodes.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah. So
They compiled it together for a movie because they've
got it.
got
Yes.
three episodes enough to make a movie, so might as well.
Right. Well, and I bring that up because I love the interactions between Lex and Joker in that series. Like, it's so fantastic. I mean, first off, it's you have the voice talents of Clancy Brown and Mark Hamill working with each other. It's just pure cinema at its best. It's exquisite. But also, I love how Lex is just viewing Joker as a complete, incompetent clown. Despite all the horrible things he's done, he's like, what makes you think you can kill Superman if you can't even catch a man in a Halloween costume? And I love their reluctant partnership in that dichotomy. So it's just, it's one of my favorite depictions of Lex, and it's what makes the series so strong throughout. And like I said, the other villains as well. Yeah.
But I love the relationship in general, Lex and Joker, because they're diametrically opposed in every way possible, except for the fact that they both hate heroes in different ways.
Exactly.
And it's gotten to the point where in the comics, like, if Lex Luthor is ever having like his big, get the Secret Society of Villains or the Doom, Legion of Doom or whatever together, he always invites the Joker, knowing he's a wild card. But it's better to invite the Joker on your team than to not invite the Joker and have him pissed off at you. So, and trying to thwart your plans. So it's like controlling that chaos is something he's had to learn along the way, and it backfires on him too later on in the Justice League, where Joker goes wild again and Batman has to mess with people in his own way. And I love, it's not, I'm trying to think how many times they've actually teamed up together in the comics. It's few and far between as I can recall. I haven't read every Action Comics, Adventure Comics, and Batman Detective Comics ever.
Right.
But I can't think, it's only happened a couple of times, but like the series proper that we're discussing, like they do a really good job there of it's like why these people are competent in their own way, but also why they keep screwing themselves over too.
Mm-hmm. And it's a hard thing to do. It's like when they did the big villain team up in Justice League, like with the version of Legion of Doom, it could have been so campy, but like that's some of my favorite episodes in that series. Well, we need to do a Justice League and Justice League Unlimited episode another time because there's so much to delve in there. But so obviously Lex, Lois, and Clark, obviously the central main characters and some of our favorites. Who are some of your other favorite characters, be they, side villains or supporting protagonists? Do you have any other favorite characters here?
This is a rough one because there's a lot to choose from.
There are a lot, And
I'm going to choose Steel for mine.
Okay. Yeah.
This was my introduction to the character, and then later on realizing, oh, wait a second, that's Worf. And he's talking as this good guy on here, and I say Worf is a bad guy, but like it's a different from Next Generation to watching him in voice acting, and like he's got a cool costume, armor. He's wielding the giant hammer. Of course, calling back to the John Henry legend of American folklore, and I loved his introductory episode. He's such a cool guy. It's like I was like. As a kid, I was like, man, I'm watching someone cool on screen. I'm going to keep using that word cool because that's how I feel about him. Like he's never been like the biggest character in comics ever, or even in the DCAU, but his introduction worked perfectly for me on the hero side of things. Villains, I mean, direct opposite, we got Lobo. And
absolutely,
chaos personified in a different way than the Joker. But like he's trying to just prove himself. This big boisterous guy who's like can match Superman equally in a fight, and just them interacting with one another is a lot of fun because he gets on Superman's nerves real easy, and it's very hard to do that. But Lobo can bring that out of him. So it's nice to see a Superman who can't compose himself and has to learn how to deal with this idiot who's also a genius and a great fighter at the same time, and how they can get out of situations together.
Well, and also my family and I are big Everybody Loves Raymond's fans. Like that's one of our favorite sitcoms. And Brad Garrett, who played Robert, was the voice of Lobo, and it's perfect voice. Yeah, this show as a whole, just like Andrea Romano is that we have to mention her name. Oh. She is the unsung hero of the DC Cinematic Universe and just animation in general. You could not have picked, I mean, we have her to thank for Kevin Conroy and Tim Daly and everyone else throughout these series. She was an absolute legend working on these. So yeah, just praise Andrea Romano for giving us like all these wonderful actors. But yeah, both great picks. And I would say if you love Steel, watch Superman and Lois because they give a great depiction of him, John Henry Irons.
Okay.
It's fantastic there. But yeah, so those also are two of my favorites. I would say in addition to that, so Jimmy Olsen, obviously, I think this is one of the great depictions of him. Not just its comic relief, but it's just like the look, the voice, everything. Like he plays it's such an integral part of the Daily Planet crew there. So I love seeing him anytime he's on an episode. And as far as other villains, I really like Parasite and how he's portrayed here. Both the like look here, and he's, I think, a little more sympathetic in ways. Like, he's not so much like bent on global destruction or anything like that. He gets kind of like screwed over in this accident, and he's in some really great episodes. So I like what they do with him here. And then Livewire, I really enjoyed because again, that was one I got kind of forgotten about. And I really like what they do with her here. And then of course Darkseid, just because this was our introduction to him through and
yes.
And again, going back to there's a lot of like episodic work in the series. Darkseid was teased at the end of season 1 here, so they were bringing him in, and I don't think they knew that what the DC universe would evolve into, that they would get to do Justice League and Justice League Unlimited, and he would be an integral part of that. But Michael Ironside as the voice there, they could just not have cast it better. I just love the physique, the all power, just how much he poses a threat to Superman. It's fantastic. So yeah, those are some of my favorites. And yeah.
Great picks. Livewire. Livewire is basically this show's Harley Quinn, and that invented for the show, then becomes part of the comics. Not as popular as her, obviously, but enough popularity to become part of the canon, as some of the opposed to the other original characters they make for this series. Then Darkseid, of course, you want to talk about the big bad. Einstein does a magnificent voice work here. This man is a menace, and all you have to do is hear him speak. Or his hand behind his back. I was used to the older 80s portrayals. I think it was the Superpowers series. And in that, Darkseid is like really fixated on getting Wonder Woman to love him and marry him and all this other wacky nonsense. But like seeing this one as opposed to that one as a kid, it's like, oh, yeah, I don't want to go up against that guy. Like this man is a threat, and they do a great work with him in this one in Justice League later on. You can only say chef's kiss so many times for the series, but yeah, chef's kiss for what they do with him.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's the ultimate. And when anytime you hear people say like, "Oh, no one could really be a formidable threat to Superman," show them Darkseid, because not just because of his power, but he's just so ruthless and so intimidating. So like my two favorite depictions of him animated wise are in here and then in the Superman Batman Apocalypse movie, where he was voiced by Andre Braugher, the late great for Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And it was great there too. But yeah,
and there's that one great line. It's something like, I am many things, Kal-El, but here I am God. It's like, okay.
So chilling. But yeah. Again, I always loved it. And I listened to the Batman Beyond episode you did with Liz and Evan, and I was thinking about that. I love that's one item thing to go on to. It's like these were shows I was watching as a kid, and I'm like the themes and even lines of dialogue like that. I was like, wow, they really got away with a lot for kids shows, because and in Batman Beyond Return of the Joker, the whole Tim Drake storyline there, that kind of traumatized me as a kid, but in a beautiful way.
Yeah, we need to do just an episode on that movie alone.
I would be down.
Great.
Yeah.
God forbid we keep showing up in this series that they do a great job on, doing more episodes on. I love stuff like this.
Oh yes, it's just that's the thing about Bruce Timm's work and all of his co-creators here, is that they were not afraid to tell mature storylines for a primarily kids audience, but something that they knew that adults would enjoy as well. And here we are, adults, years and years later, still consuming these and having a different outlook on them, and perhaps appreciating them even more than when we were kids. And so that's what I love about the show. And
most definitely.
Yeah. And with that, so favorite episodes. So there's a lot here. I want to point out. I think this is one of the best retellings of Superman's origin. With the three-part pilot here, Last Son of Krypton. And because with Batman the Animated Series, they didn't, even throughout the show, they didn't really explore Batman's origin. They did it in the movie Batman Mask of the Phantasm, which I'm going to still say is like one, if not the best Batman movie. I probably still say the best Batman movie. Maybe it's just it's phenomenal. But they did the origin there. They never really did it in the show. This series, however, started straight off with the origin of Superman. The first episode was focused on Jor-El and the destruction of Krypton, and then episode 2 went into Smallville. Episode 3 was Superman emerging in Metropolis and revealing himself to the world. So I think it's one of the best. And what I really liked what they did here was having Brainiac be central to Krypton's origins. He was a sentient being that was used to power as like an energy power source for Krypton there. I thought that was a fascinating choice. And so making him so tied to Superman's origin as a whole, I think set him up as a really great villain later on. So that's absolutely one of my favorites is the origin episode, the 3-part pilot, Last Son of Krypton. Other than that, this series did start to build the wider DC universe before Justice League was greenlit, but one episode I really enjoy is the Flash episode, where they recreate the iconic race between Superman and Flash in that one, and they also team up to fight Weather Wizard. That one is a classic. I know Michael Rosenbaum didn't voice Flash in that episode. He did voice him for Justice League later on. And there is like a difference in the voice, but that was this was years before. But that is a great episode. I love the Metallo ones. I love the Livewire ones again were a lot of fun here. And there's some. And then I think the crown jewel for me is again the Batman Superman that was eventually became the Batman Superman movie here. That again I watched repeatedly on VHS. That one I cannot get enough of. That merged with the same time as New Adventures of Batman. That is absolutely one of the best team ups you'll ever see. Sorry, BVS, but that is the crowned Batman Superman movie for me.
I mean, there's no contest at this point in time. Yeah, this was my pick for my number one. I'm a crossover guy. I'm a team up guy. I love solo stories too, but it's just something that gets me when I see two superheroes in the same story together. Mm-hmm. Even if that story is complete and utter just worthlessness, like I'm in it to win it. But this one is far from worthless. This is like how you do it. You have Bruce and Clark like figuring out each other's identity and through some shenanigans there, working together despite not liking each other at the very beginning. Like they have their own different method of doing things. And you've got, of course, as we mentioned earlier, Lex and Joker working together, and the shenanigans that come up from that. Harley and Mercy facing off against each other. Lois Lane and a little bit of a love triangle for these 3 episodes. And then just having them confront each other, and like, there's no way to joke or whatever be a serious threat to Superman. Well, guess what? Evens everything up. Kryptonite. And there's a reason he went after, I think it's like that Jade Dragon or whatever it was in the museums, because it's made out of kryptonite. And you also get the beginnings of their friendship in this one for Clark and Bruce, of like him trusting him enough to have kryptonite on his person, because like they've earned it together as being like, I see what you do, I see what you do. We come at things differently, but we both want to save people, we both want to help people. There's also that great line, I'm pretty sure it's this one, where the Joker is falling down, presumably to his death for like the 50th time, and Harley's like, pudding, and Batman just says nonchalant, at this point he probably is.
I love it. And there's even a scene there with Bruce Wayne and Lex, like in an elevator, which was a fascinating dichotomy to have 2 billionaires on opposite ends of the spectrum, one evil, one good, have very different opposing ideas, have a brief exchange. I thought, was fascinating. It's just, the blueprint was there all along for a live action Batman Superman movie, and instead they ignored that. But now I have hope going forward because James Gunn is in charge.
Yeah. And so honorable mentions to get the Main Man episode, where both Lobo and Superman get taken away to this like arc essentially of like being the last of their kind that becomes like a background thing in multiple episodes of the Superman taking those things into the Fortress of Solitude and protecting and taking care of them. That becomes a huge part of the continuity of the DCAU, and that Starro is one of those things. And, you know, in Batman Beyond, this gets picked back up on. That doesn't happen unless this episode happens. As well, of course, the Mxyzptlk, you can say his name like 50 different ways, and every single time you're going to be wrong. But I like the episode a lot because it shows off a side of Superman that doesn't get focused on a lot, and that he's fairly smart. He's not like a genius level person, but he can outwit people, and he like outwitting Mr. Mxyzptlk multiple times over in this episode to get him to say his name backwards. It's a goofy 50s idea, you know, when Mxyzptlk comes up on the scene, and yet they make it work here. And Dark Horse, I'm actually going to throw in, what is it called? I think it's The Late Mr. Kent is the episode where Clark Kent is presumed to have died, and he's trying to find this corrupt cop, I think, because there's a guy who's about to be sentenced to death, and the guy was actually behind a lot of the stuff. And through the process of pretending that Clark Kent is dead, he's able to figure out what's actually going on, not come back to life, but like show up back on a scene again. And the guy, the corrupt cop, I'm pretty sure it's a cop. It's like but right before he's sentenced to being electrocuted to death, realizes that Clark Kent is Superman, but he can't do anything about it because that's when he's killed. Not on screen, but pretty much heavily implied in a children's cartoon. Like, it's done extremely well.
They did really, throughout DC, the animated universe, they did really clever ways of like, you know, oh, that character is dead, but they couldn't explicitly show it. You know, like there was like you remember the arc in Justice League when they go back to World War II, and you know, I mean, they couldn't like show like a soldier dying there, but you hear the gunshot and you go off screen. Like they did everything they could to like really scratch the still meet the you know the guidelines for what they could and couldn't show, but it was like, oh, they clearly had like death here. But again, we're very not afraid to go for mature storytelling, even though it was technically a kid show. But no, those ones are great. Trying to think of any others, but yeah, I mean, and Lobo, it's funny, like earlier, I have a friend from work who is not a DC guy at all. He's entirely Marvel. But I was trying to tell him, like, dude, I think you would really dig Lobo. Like, and I just sent him his Wikipedia page and said, like, read this and tell me that doesn't sound interesting. And they do a great job with him in the series.
Yeah, plenty of great ones to choose from.
Yeah, there is. I mean, there's a 54 right here. And then, you know, and it's all part, again, of a larger interconnected universe. But yeah.
Here at Systematic Geekology, we believe in a few things. We believe that there is freedom in Christ to like what you like. We believe that Christian nationalism is a heresy. And probably most important that I'm going to talk about today, at least, is that we believe the best place to spend your extra cash is on the Systematic Geekology merch store. That's right. This is a shameless shill for our own products. We go through Creator Spring, and we have a few great products on there. Me personally, I'm a big like black shirt kind of guy, you know, muted colors. But there's nothing better to like throw a little something extra on there with like a black baseball cap, the dad hat with the Systematic Geekology logo on it. That's a classic. I just really think if you got a couple, you know, $30 extra, that's for us.
So, Christian, thinking about, again, why, you know, we've talked a lot about, you know, many times on Systematic Geekology, you and I especially, about like why Superman is still relevant and, you know, like it's, you know, broader influence on pop culture, even though there are still naysayers out there. What do you think about this show makes it still relevant today? Because I think especially now, you know, like we said, James Gunn cites this as a major influence for his Superman movie and for the wider DC universe going forward. Like we were talking about earlier, I think at the time during the 90s, it wasn't as big a hit as Batman the Animated Series. And, you know, Batman the Animated Series is still like the crown jewel of superhero storytelling. But I feel like this show in particular has aged really well and is developing more fans as it's gone on. So what do you think makes it really stand out and remain relevant today.
Yeah, there's a much maligned line in the Man of Steel movie, and there's a reason it's maligned because it's delivered poorly and a bad film. But that's its own separate issue. Is the S stands for hope, and the idea being is that Superman himself stands for hope. That's a terrible line in a terrible movie, but the idea behind it, yeah, sure, I get it because that's who Superman is.
Right.
He is hope because he's the best of us. He isn't human, but he's who we should be aspiring to be. He's not a Jesus figure. Once again, comics being created most of the time by more Jewish creators at the time in the 30s. He's more of a Moses figure. And Moses inspired a lot of hope in what was going on there. So that's something we need to look up to, is this person who wants us to be better than who we are. And Superman has a tremendous way of doing that because he has all that power. And what does he do with it? He uses it to help people.
I couldn't agree more. And and that's again what I love about this show is that I think it really does emphasize the Moses allegories more so than like the Jesus Christ figure allegories that a lot of Superman depictions and modern stories have tried to emphasize. This really emphasizes that, yeah, he is just a human with gifts here, trying to inspire people to be the best they can. He's not the, infallible person here. He has weaknesses. He has, everyday problems that he has to deal with as well, and is trying to balance his life as, a reporter and his relationships and, his superhero duties. But yeah, he wants humanity to be the best it can be. And that is what really stands out about this series. It's just that it remains true throughout to the spirit and the icon of who Superman is at its core. It doesn't try to mess with that formula. It just brings it alive in a modern age, modern at the time, but still this fits into the modern era of Superman. And I think it just holds up all these years later because it really stays true to all of its characters, the heroes and the villains alike, and it gives them distinct personalities and distinct traits and distinct motivations. And the world building is so unique and so immersive. And like I said, it fits in so well with the wider DC universe. So it's just, for me, one of the best depictions of the character. And all these years later, I think I appreciate it even more now than when I did as a kid, because I was wildly entertained as a kid watching all these shows. But looking at them now, I'm like, wow, these have amazing themes in them, really mature storylines, great, rich characters that, are perfect for other adaptations. And so that's why I love that James Gunn is drawing on this as a major source of inspiration. I also, just on a quick note here, I was looking up like the Wikipedia pages earlier from the cast members, and this is where I don't know if I just feel old or if it's surreal or what, but okay, so like when I'm a kid watching this, like, oh, Superman is this larger than life figure. He's, all my, and then I saw Superman Returns when I was like, I was like 12 then. So obviously Superman, adult then, larger than life. Then I get to like Man of Steel. Okay, I was a freshman in college, so I was closer in age to Henry Cavill then. But then now I am David Corenswet, who plays Superman in the new movie, is only 3 months older than I am. His birthday is today, and I'm like, whoa, I'm the same age as Superman. I don't know I don't know if I'm to say that like I'm old or that's surreal or cool or whatever, but that's just a weird feeling that like it's for a character that has been around my entire life and has been portrayed by multiple people. Now I'm at the age where, oh my, I'm the same age as Superman. So it's a wild thing. TJ is piping in saying that Lex Luthor should have hair.
We've been blessed to have a rare TJ appearance. He never listens to anything that we do, but here he is putting in a bad opinion on purpose. Depending on your continuity, Lex starts off with hair, and then because of Superman loses it. A victim of the post-crisis is that I don't think that's no longer canon, but right. You know what? Some things needed to die after the crisis happened.
So TJ, if you want your Lex with hair, you can go to those versions. They do exist, but I don't think it's going to happen much going forward.
Also, funnily enough, the Ultra Humanite was one of Superman's earliest villains too, and back in the day, and he kind of served like a Luthor role, and eventually those qualities got to transfer to just Lex.
That's awesome. Yeah, yeah. But just that look right there. How can you develop a better look of Lex Luthor than right there? It's just
Right.
perfect. Yeah, awesome. Well, Christian, if you had to rate this series on a 1 to 10 scale, I know this is tough, but if you had to pick a number, what do you think you would give it?
I like it less than Batman the Animated Series.
Yeah.
I think that one has more quality overall, but
Yeah.
this one is still pretty solid. I'm giving this one a 9 out of 10. Like, this was my introduction to a lot of DC concepts and characters. And there's some nostalgia behind that, but I think most of the episodes are tightly written. There's some stinkers, but for the most part, you're going to have a great time with this. If you want, this is your introduction to Superman all these years later, have at it.
I would say I would give it the same rating, actually. I mean, Batman the Animated Series, is formative for me, and it is, a 10 out of 10. Just, master storytelling overall, and my favorite depiction of Batman. But Superman the Animated Series, like I said, I don't love every episode, but as far as a depiction of the character, as far as a great, animated storytelling, and it with rich characters, great animation, still holds up all these years later. I agree. It's also just it's hard to give like anything less than really high rating in this era of DC animation because they're all just fantastic. So yeah, I would say 9 out of 10 as well.
All right.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, this was fantastic. And before we go, Christian, do you have any recommendations either related to Superman, or it could be something totally different as well?
I just needed something to give me a laugh, and it's not intended to be a laugh, but if you didn't know, the Chariots of the God, Eric von Daniken, is an ancient astronaut theory book about how back in the day civilizations were visited by aliens, and that's how the pyramids were built, and Machu Picchu, and so on and so forth. And I just needed something fun to read. And like, he's serious in everything he says, but as someone who does believe in alien life, I don't think this is how it happened. So it gave me a good chuckle. So Chariots of the Gods, don't go developing any philosophies or theologies around it, as some people unfortunately have. But if you want to just have good fun, like not take something seriously, go read that.
I love it. That's great. I think for me, we talked a lot about DC animation here. I want to recommend Static Shock. If you've never seen it, that is also one of the best, and it is a phenomenal show. And I'm really hoping they do. I'm sure they will eventually. That one is not out on Blu-ray yet. They have it on DVDs, but I really want to add that to my DC animation Blu-ray collection when that happens. But phenomenal show. Phil Lamar was the main voice there, and also has Kevin Michael Richardson, and it was created by all the creators from Milestone at the time, and it's phenomenal. It's really mirrors kind of like a Spider-Man type story and character. A lot of those themes are there of just a teenage superhero trying to juggle all of the different areas of his life. Absolute phenomenal storytelling throughout, and they really need to put that back on Max and get it on Blu-ray, because it deserves to be in every comic fan's, every DC fan's household.
Oh yeah, excellent series.
Yes.
Also worth doing an episode on.
Yes, so we will. Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, I think we can easily go through all the big ones. We've done Batman Beyond, we've done Superman. I know we talked about, I don't know if we've ever done like one specific episode on Batman the Animated Series. That may have to be multiple because there are so many episodes.
I mean,
and then we'll have to do,
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I'd be all for it. And then, Justice League and Justice League Unlimited. So we'll get through them all. But yeah. Awesome. Well, Christian, thank you so much for joining me today. This was fantastic. And again, for our listeners, viewers out there, please like, subscribe, support the show. Follow us subscribe to us on Patreon. We would really appreciate your help there. And give us a like on YouTube, because again, those promises about us showing off our geek caves and Will frolicking through either the interior of his geek cave or a field of flowers, those promises still hold up. So, thank you all for joining, and remember, we are all a chosen people, a geekdom of priests. Peace, y'all.
Hey, podcast fam, want to stay even more connected with the show? We've got you covered. Check us out on Instagram and Blue Sky, where we're posting exclusive content and bonus videos and fun updates that you won't get anywhere else. From sneak previews of upcoming episodes to bonus content, our social accounts are the best way to keep the conversation going. Plus, it's a great spot for you to interact with other listeners and share your thoughts. We love hearing from you. When you follow us, it helps us grow and continue bringing you the content that you love. Whether it's a funny poll, a quick clip from today's episodes, or just random thoughts, you'll feel more plugged into everything we're doing. So go ahead and hit that follow button on Instagram and Blue Sky. It's one more way to be a part of the show and keep the good vibes flowing. Thanks for being a part of the family, and we can't wait to see you there.
Hello, Systematic Geekology listeners. This is Kevin here. Just want to give a brief ad for some of the other podcasts in our Anazao podcast network. First of all, off is Let Nothing Move You by Christian Ashley, in which Christian goes through the Bible one chapter at a time and gives his thoughts there. There is also the Bible After Hours, which is a more progressive take on the Bible that tries to challenge the status quo with satire and looks at theology. The host uses the pseudonym The Foul-Mouthed Preacher. And as a bonus, Joshua Knoll does the voices for this one. So definitely check that one out. And also, And We'll Laugh About That Later is the newest podcast that our own Will Rose is starting, where he will interview friends about a story they had that wasn't funny at the time, but that they laugh about now. So definitely check out these shows and subscribe to us wherever you get your pods. Thank you very much.